Today, we are going to analyze together episode 25 of the third season of Adventure Time called Dad's Dungeon and try to delve into the meaning of this episode, what it represents, and how it can be applied to our own lives. Because although Adventure Time may seem like a silly cartoon when you haven't watched it yet, it actually carries a crazy emotional load and teaches many things through the great stories it tells. So grab your coffee and let's go. The episode begins with Finn and Jake, along with BMO, playing casually on their treehouse boat when suddenly some sparks appear. When they chase after the sparks to squash them or whatever, they end up finding a holographic machine that produces holograms, obviously. They then discover that their deceased father left them a hologram saying he had created a dungeon full of monsters and challenges for them to face, which would obviously be very difficult. However, he tells Jake to cover Finn's ears and reveals to Jake that the dungeon is just a test to toughen Finn up. It was already somewhat perceptible that their father was irritated with Finn's fragility when he cries while being held, for example. For him, Finn's constant crying was probably a clear sign of weakness, and he thought his son would never be able to be a strong guy if he didn't get rid of that fragility and face a challenge tough enough to strip that away from him. Hence, the dungeon. We can quickly think of the phrase, men don't cry, which is obviously a lie. Before the hologram ends, he tells Finn that he won't even get past the first challenge and calls him a crybaby, trying to toughen the boy up through emotional blows, which obviously leaves Finn extremely confused. Then go to the dungeon, and Finn manages to defeat the monsters by acting quite intelligently, actually, which brings them to the second message their father left for them. Finn covers his ears, and their father reminds Jake that the dungeon is for Finn to stop being a crybaby and learn to take the lead in situations. However, we know that Finn has no problem taking the lead in difficult situations, even putting himself at risk for others without caring about the consequences or his own safety, thus embodying the hero syndrome. But there's no way his father could know that since he died. At the end of the message, he asks Jake to call Finn a crybaby again to keep pushing him, helping in quotes the goal of strengthening him, but it's clear that Jake doesn't want to do this because he doesn't believe it's true. They follow the path inside the dungeon through a portal. Then Jake reveals that their father called him a crybaby once again, and then calls him that too. It's at this point in the episode that the emotional end is completely shaken. He ends up letting anger, confusion, and uncertainty take over and make him feel internally destabilized. From his point of view, if the people he cared about most in the world were saying he was weak, maybe he wasn't as strong as he thought. Maybe his feelings were indeed a burden that prevented him from taking charge of situations and distancing him from being a tough guy that his father idealized him to be. He then becomes discouraged and doesn't even care about escaping when the monsters chase him and ends up being saved by Jake. They then reach the next clue, and Jake can't take it anymore and tells Finn to listen so he can understand what was happening and stop feeling weak. However, they realize their father has been captured by a monster inside the final dungeon room, and they rush in to defeat the beast. The problem is that Finn couldn't fight back due to his emotional fragility. He was feeling completely incapable. Jake, seeing that Finn would end up dying if he didn't do something, played the last tape their father left for them, the one reserved to congratulate Finn after he overcame all of the challenges and his own limitations. After all, their father believed in him and knew he had the ability to win and wanted to do great things even if he was like a crybaby. Finn then, after listening to what his father said, manages to break free from these chains of uncertainty and defeats a giant monster with relative ease. We realize that Finn's weakness isn't because he is a crybaby or not, but because he feels and believes he is one. He doesn't need to be a tough guy to take charge of situations because, although he is fragile in some aspects and shows his feelings at times or cries, when people die, as he himself said, none of this changes the fact that he will face any situation, even when it seems he doesn't stand a chance, often driven solely by those feelings he shows, like literally now when he defeated the giant monster because of the satisfaction and relief of knowing his father loved him and believed in him. Not crying can make you a tough guy, but crying can make you unbeatable.